Well, hello, everybody.
Hello.
Just a friendly little warning for those of you that are eating here. These mics are very sensitive, so everybody that's listening can hear you chew.
Oh, dear.
No, I'm kidding. They can't hear you chew. I don't think they can hear you chew. I have no idea, but it would be kind of funny, right? Anyway, just to introduce myself a little bit, my name is Kevin Maher. I am I work with Workplace Money Coach. I'm personally a personal credit consultant, and that's my specialty, but I also work with personal finance, budgeting, etc. I've been working in this kind of stuff for many, many years. I am a former president of the Palm Beach County Affordable Housing Collaborative. I do know a lot about mortgages. Having been in the mortgage business itself as well, and the car business. Just about anything having to do with personal budgeting or credit, personal finance, outside of investing. I am not an investment expert, so you don't want to ask me that kind of advice. I can tell you where to go to get that kind of advice. You guys have people here. But basically, what I'm here to talk to you about today is creating financial goals, building future wealth now, and making credit into a profit center. Basically, we're talking about healthy, working class financial health. I just said health twice, didn't I? So anyway, there's three parts of good financial health, at least to me. There's three main areas. There's having a monetary safety net, and this is, of course, assuming that you have an income or some kind of steady stream of cash flow. But a monetary safety net, in other words, what do you have set aside when something inevitably goes wrong? Do things go wrong? Yes. There's always going to be something, right? If you have kids, right, they're going to come home, and suddenly you have to go to the craft store and spend $150 on stuff for that project they told you about that's due tomorrow, you know? So things happen. You need to have money in reserve. If you don't have money in reserve, if you're living month to month, you're just waiting for your next financial disaster. And of course, savings for retirement. Can we count on Social Security being there? No, the younger you are, the less likely it is for it to be there, or they keep pushing the age up in order to obtain the benefits. So, you know, if you're really young, you might have to be like 85 before you can get Social Security at the rate we're going. It gets treated like it's a what they call an entitlement program. I have a hard time considering something that we specifically pay into for a specific benefit as being an entitlement, but that's how it's getting attacked. So it means that we're on our own when it comes to retirement. You know, the days of pensions, you know, there's very, very, very few places that offer pensions. There's even government jobs don't really have a pension. They have a forced investment program. So basically, and then great credit. And there's a reason I consider great credit one of the three prongs of good financial health, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So what is the one thing that can help you be successful in all three parts of financial health? What's one tool that you can use?
Good job.
Budget.
Who said that?
Budget.
Budget, yes. So you kind of like ruined all that. I took an entire all-day class in learning how to use PowerPoint just so I could do that right there. So you just now saw everything I know how to do with PowerPoint. That's pretty cool, right? Bounced in. Anyway, so a little quiz. What are some characteristics of good goals?
Specific.
Specific, yes, absolutely, sure.
Measurable.
Measurable, absolutely. You guys are hitting my list. What else? Realistic, absolutely. I mean, I can have a goal of hitting the lottery, but it's not really something that's realistic. It's certainly not measurable. It is specific. So it hits 1 out of, I think, 5. What else? Can you think of anything else? Okay. Time contingent. Yeah, you have a timetable for it. You have a set amount of time to reach that goal. So we'll just say specific, attainable or realistic, measurable, adaptable. So you do need to be flexible. And because sometimes things change. You know, if your goal is to have a Miata in 2 years, and then suddenly you find out you're, say, pregnant, Miata may not be the best choice. So maybe now it changes to small SUV. And again, timed. So yeah, you guys did great on that. Why are goals so important?
Like a checklist, you only get, you want to get it finished or whatever, kind of.
Okay, sure. What else? Do you think having goals and having them, as I said here, none of the above matter if goals aren't put in writing and tracked? But do you think that can help you to get to those goals?
Yeah.
Keep you focused? You know, maybe have a prize that you got your eyes on. You know, they always say keep your eye on the prize, but if you haven't defined the prize, right? Unless it's winning the lottery, of course. You read the numbers. So, and there's some types of goals. Short-term goals, and it really doesn't matter how you label them. You know, I say less than a year. Some people say less than 6 months. You know, it's semi-relevant. The main idea is that, you know, you have categories of goals that you're working towards. And short-term goals, what would be some examples of that? How about Christmas money, for instance? How about, you know, you're going to need tires on your car in the next few months? You know, just certain things like that. Things that are coming up soon that you need to do. Maybe, you know, maybe you have a vacation that you want to do in 6 months. You know, whatever it is. And then there's medium-term goals. More like on the cat. You see what that? That's a real calendar. You can actually buy that calendar. I think it's specifically meant for those white elephant gift exchanges because someone always has to bring a gag gift. Just so you know, if you're ever involved in one of those with me, I am the gag gift guy.
Bad guy?
Yeah, I'm the not bad guy.
That guy.
I'm that guy. Look, one time we had one of those gift exchanges, and I'm in Costco, and I see this big jar of pickled pig's feet. I'm thinking, this is it. This is the gift. Big and heavy, and it's going to bring a big laugh. And it did. This guy opens it up, and the whole room is roaring laughing. 2 people later, this elderly Southern gentleman, I haven't had those in years, and he wheels up and he steals it. So not only did my gag gift get the laugh, it actually had a fine home for it. So now this, I'm not sure if anyone would steal this. And then long term. Who knows this car?
Yeah, Back to the Future.
Yeah. Does anybody watch Orange is the New Black? How about that if you're into season 7, that really stupid stoner guard showing up in a DeLorean? Was there anything more perfect? Anyway, so long-term goals, which would be things like retirement, right? So basically, you want to define things that you're looking to do so you can make sure you're on track to do them so they don't become sudden expenses. You know, plan for these things and build these things into the budget that we're talking about. And goals and budgets work together because in your budget, you can have line items that are specific things to go to your goals. Now, for reaching your goals, for putting that money aside, I mean, is it a good idea to just leave it lumped in with your checking?
No.
It's really hard to separate, right? So what can you do?
Have a separate savings.
Maybe more than one savings account. Can you have your direct deposit go to more than one place?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can make it come directly out of your check, right?
Yeah, what you don't see, you don't
Yeah.
see.
How many can you have? Do you know? Anybody?
2, right here?
2 is the limit?
Yeah.
Okay. But even if you put it into a savings account, you can still spread it out into others. And now that we have Zelle, who knows what Zelle is? Zelle is like almost every bank uses, so you can send money somewhere else like that. You can send it to yourself using Zelle. So if you have other savings accounts, even with different institutions, and sometimes having that money in a separate institution is a good idea, just so it's set aside.
What is it
And you
called,
look at-
Kevin? Please repeat.
Zelle, Z-E-L-L-E.
Z-E-L-L-E.
It's like, you know, Cash App and Venmo, these things. Well, the banking system has basically, seems to have almost universally agreed that the system they want to be a part of is Zelle. So it's actually inside of your, like I have Zelle inside my app for USAA savings. And I had Zelle with Citibank. And it's, you know, I can access it right through my banking app. And I send money to my daughter every month in college using Zelle. And it's there instantly. my girlfriend and I need to throw money back and forth, it's like, I mean, almost faster than the notification, your bank has it. And the notification's pretty quick. But the goals do need to be in the budget. The budget is where you find the money. And you got things like Christmas and vacations. These all need to be accounted for. Does Christmas happen every year? And yet we act so surprised when it gets here. Oh no, Christmas again? Didn't we just have one last December? Your kids have birthdays every year, right? I mean, there's some things you know are coming. Some things, even things that in our budget we don't really account for yet that we can put in there that, renewing your tags. Unless you just have such a good safety net that it's not going to be relevant, because that can cover some of those incidental things, but one way or another, you've got to be thinking of those incidental things that happen periodically so that that's part of what your savings plan is. Sometimes this means cutting back in other areas, though, doesn't it? There we go. Okay. Now, some of the keys to making the goals a reality, some of the keys to making a budget work, is first do a spending log to find out how much money you're really wasting, you're really spending on things. Your grocery bill, everybody has an idea of what their grocery bill is. 90% of the people that I do one-on-ones with say this is how much I'm spending on groceries. Then they do the spending log, and they find out that that's not the actual number that they've been spending on groceries. The little incidental things. I always make this in another presentation. And basically, I've got a lot of information, so this is really going to be more summary type instead of, but when I do other classes, they're going to be more specific. So we do have a class specifically on cutting costs and saving money. We have classes specifically on credit, on mortgages, things like that. This is more of a, what should your financial health look like in general? And doing that spending log, that's when you start to realize how much that donut and coffee every day, some people, my ex, whenever we swapped the kid back and forth, it was always at a Starbucks. And my daughter would tell me, no, you don't talk to mommy until she's had her Starbucks. Can you make coffee at home? I mean, spending $6 a day. Think about this, $3 a day at the end of the year. If you were saving that $3 instead of spending it on coffee and a donut, it's $1,095. That's a pretty good Christmas right there on coffee and a donut every day, right? $7 a day, which, I mean, it's hard to spend as little as $7 on lunch anymore. Have you been to McDonald's lately?
We went up.
Yeah. I went out of McDonald's and I thought I barely had enough. I'm like $9. And I didn't even have a hot apple pie or a McFlurry or anything like that. It was just the food. And they always hit you now, do you want a medium or large? That was small. Now the medium is about that big for them. So they're shrinking the sizes and it has gotten more expensive even at McDonald's. So $7 a day, I probably need to change my example to $9 a day, but I haven't done the math on yet, so I'm not going to sound as smart when I say $7 a day is $2,555 at the end of the year. See, it sounds like I did math real fast in my head, doesn't it? Instead of just remembering that example. But $2,555 on daily lunch, if you're being frugal, daily lunch, as opposed to bringing lunch. I mean, bringing lunch still costs money, and I know some people say, well, it cost me $3 to bring it anyway, what's another $4? Well, $4 is $365 on top of $1,095.
Just like movies, it used to
Yeah.
be cheap, and now no more.
Yeah, you always feed everybody before you go to the movies. Never go to the movies hungry, because you do not want to spend the money on the food. $10 popcorn, I'll walk in with popcorn in my pockets and a plastic liner if I have to. No, I don't do that. But I have snuck a Snickers bar in my pocket, But seriously, you almost have to, it's cheaper to eat at a restaurant before going to the movies than to eat garbage food at the movies. So plus, if you're drinking big sodas, you're going to have to go to the bathroom and you're going to miss Thanos snapping the earth out of existence. So you can't do that, right? You got to see Thanos. So anyway, yeah, it's so these things work together. The budget works together with the goals because you can incorporate the goals into the budget. If the budget is out of whack, there's certain things that you can do, and part of it is doing that spending log to see where money's really going, to see where maybe you need to make adjustments, to see what you're really spending, because a lot of times part of the problem is we don't know how much we're really spending. So The budget is supposed to be a living document that you adapt as time goes on. Not just this thing you do one time and say, oh man, this sucks, and then never look at it again, which is kind of what we do. So you want it to be something you say, okay, this isn't right. What do I do? Because I need more money to go over here. So what kind of changes do I have to make? And then start making those changes. Now, what about with your benefits? Let's talk about the long-term goals. And of course, the short-term goals should be among those getting that safety net, right? How much of a safety net should you have? First, what do you think I mean when I say safety net?
Rainy day money.
Lose your job.
Rainy day money, lose your job, that could be the same day. You know, that's more of a hurricane, but it's a very rainy hurricane. But yeah, losing your job, just, you know, anything happens. Your hours get cut back, you know, whatever, you lose overtime. There's a lot of things that can happen, just a big expense that you don't expect. You know, the transmission goes. And you decide you don't want another car payment, everything's great on the car, I'd rather have another transmission instead of buying a new car and starting payments for $50,000, let me just buy a $2,000 transmission. It's nice when you have the money to do that, right? So those things that happen that are inevitable, I used to do a thing like, can we plan for everything? Can we account for every possible thing that could happen to us? No, we really can't. And then I would have a picture of King Kong and Godzilla doing battle over somebody's house, you know. And it's like, you're probably not planning on King Kong and Godzilla. And by the way, your homeowner's insurance does not cover you if your home is blown up in a nuclear explosion caused by war. So, no, you don't get a new house if the Russians nuke us. So yeah, there are things beyond what we can possibly plan for, but probably 95% of the things that do happen to people could be accounted for by having that rainy day money. Now, how much money do you think is a good idea to have in reserve? Just cash reserves.
3 months.
6 months.
6 months.
6 months is the traditional thinking. After that last extremely serious recession, a lot of planners have said maybe it should go more towards a year. But 6 months is a great start, right? I mean, the main thing is start with something. If you've got nothing, let's prove to ourselves we can save something. Put something back and just let it start rolling. If you have to do it slowly initially until you can make other changes later, but maybe start making a plan for how to do changes later. And you know, those things could be, you know, side gigs, things like that. I send my daughter money every month in college through driving Uber. When I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, I can't fall asleep again. I either get somebody coming from an airport, going to an airport, or I get somebody at a 4 a.m. strip club. That's never any fun because they're always drunk off their keister and, you know, drooling. But I do it. Okay, maybe when I see it's at the strip club, I don't pick that one up. I just say I'll take another one. Anyway, so with the long term, how many people here are contributing to the 401k? Okay, the majority. How many of you really don't and you just raised your hand because you didn't want to look? Well, last year, I think this is right, like 25% of your contribution up to 8% of your income. Is that what was done last year?
That's not my area.
If it wasn't, it's something along these lines. I believe it's to be, but the main idea here is if somebody's contributing, and I'll give you some examples here. Somebody making $3,000 a month, if they contribute 8%, that's $240 a month. Now, it's a pre-tax contribution. And these are the tax rates right now. These are the new tax rates. So as you increase in income, you see the tax rate goes up. Now keep in mind, the contribution is the top part of it. So what they'd be holding back, if you're up over $38,700 a year in taxable income, they're going to be taxing 12% of this. If, let's say you're between 38 and 82, you're taxed up to 38 at 12%, and then they start taxing at 22% on the money above 38. Does that make sense? So whatever your highest bracket is basically the money that's not getting taxed here, because it's coming out of that top end, right? It's lowering the top end of your income, so as long as you're above that number. So if you're getting taxed at 12%, instead of $240 coming out of your check, $211.20 come out of your check because you're not being taxed on that $240. So the taxes are reduced, so the net drop from your check is not $240, it's $211. So you're already a little ahead, aren't you? And if you're in the 22%, you're only getting $187 coming out of your check, but $240 is going into your IRA. Right? Does everybody follow that? Does that make sense? So it's the amount you put in, you're not really having that much taken out of your check. It's a little bit less because it's not being taxed. The tax is going to happen on the back end. Now, what happens with the tax on the back end, usually you don't need as much income on the back end. So how much are you going to be drawing out of it? Usually you're going to be drawing it out at a lower amount than you're being paid now because hopefully your house is paid off. You know, your expenses go down overall in general. So because your expenses are going down, you're not having to draw out as much as you were making now. So you should be getting taxed at a lower rate, assuming the tax rates haven't changed a whole bunch by then, because that's the wild card in this. But just think about this now. If you're contributing $240 a month, and let's say, and it's basically year to year, they look at the overall profits and they decide how much is going to come in, but I know that that 8% number was done recently. So if you're putting in 240 and they add another 60, they're matching 25% of it up to a certain number. You're putting in 240, but 300 is going in because of that 25% match. So, and in reality, if you're in the 12% bracket, 211 comes out of your check, 300 goes into your retirement. That's pretty good math, right? And if you're at the 22% bracket, 187.20 turns into $300 going into your retirement. So you're already making money on your retirement. Now, keep in mind this too. The sooner you start, this is a long game. And let's say that, and we're not talking about being really, really aggressive here with all of your money. Basically, when you are deciding on how, because you can decide how your money is going to be put into these investments. Your 401ks and IRAs are basically 401ks, what you have here. The 401k is going to put your money into basically a bucket of stocks and bonds and different investments. You decide how aggressive you want that money to be. If you want to be higher risk, of course, you have higher potential returns, but a higher risk of that money crashing. Are recessions inevitable? So far, right? There's one coming all the time. As soon as we finish one, it's just a countdown to the next one. The only thing that's different is it 7 years? Is it 12 years? We're on a long stretch because we've been going up since about 2009, right? That's when we started climbing back up again, recovering. So we went through many, many years of recovering. This recovery didn't just start 2 years ago. We've had tremendous growth in our stocks for a long time. Keep this in mind. When the economy crashes and all your stocks become worth less, but when they inevitably rebound, and they always come back to records, so they're setting new records again, right? But while it's down, your $300 is buying a lot more stock, right? So when it comes back up, the other stuff is relative to whatever it was, but that stuff you're buying when the market's crashed is actually good. So all these people say, oh, I got to get out of it. We just crashed. That's the worst time to get out of it. I mean, really, and this is what you should be using your 401k advisors for. You have people here that work on behalf of the employees here for the company that does the 401k plan. They are the people that will sit down with you and will tell you as you're getting closer to retirement. They actually, one program they have automatically every year reduces the risk. Because the basic rule of thinking is the closer you are to retirement, the less risky your investment should be, right? So when you heard all these people that, I'm retired and I just lost half my 401k, you had a really bad advisor. If you're already retired and you were involved in investments that could be cut in half, you had really bad advice in that point. Or maybe they just made their own decisions and they were being greedy. Because what happens is the economy, when it's doing really, really well, you have a lot of people that suddenly think they're giving advice. How many people were told they needed to buy Bitcoin? Maybe that'll be a great investment eventually, but it was really, really high, and then it dropped really, really low. And a lot of people that jumped in, I think it was Warren Buffett that said when and I might be paraphrasing here, I don't know if he said the guy at McDonald's, but if the guy at McDonald's is starting to give you financial advice, maybe it's time to back off the market. Because that's what happens. Everybody starts, how many people were buying and flipping homes? You know why the crash happened so fast? Because at one point, 1/3 of the houses being bought in Palm Beach County, Broward County, and Dade County, and I was involved in housing counseling at this time, so one of our functions was free foreclosure avoidance. We would help people stay in their homes and get loan modifications. 1/3 of the houses were being bought by investors at one point. So that's half again as many people in the buying market pushing the market up. And these people are buying $400,000 homes, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,500 square feet in your average non-HOA neighborhood, the house I grew up in. And they're thinking somehow in 2 years, this home that has no business being $400,000 to begin with is going to be worth $600,000. Now, if I have $600,000 to buy a house with, I'm not looking for a 3-2 non-HOA plain old regular neighborhood with 1,500 square feet total and maybe a yard you can throw a football from one end to the other. And I'm thinking I want water in my backyard with a boat. And I may just go elsewhere. And that's what happened in South Florida is the nurses, the policemen, the school teachers, they were leaving. It's starting to happen again. They're starting to go to places. I have a lot of friends, including a sister who's in Tennessee now, people in Tennessee, people in North Carolina, other states without income taxes. And they've upsized but cut costs because that's what happens when it gets real expensive. But I'm just saying, the investment market tends to push itself. It's going to reach a point where everything is overvalued, and then somebody's going to, the little kid spotting the emperor with no clothes is going to say, hey, that emperor's got no clothes. Or in this case, those houses aren't worth that much. And everybody's like, oh my God, they aren't worth that much. And then the big dump happens. Or when it stocks, these kind of things, the big dump happens. It happens. But it's not a thing to be afraid of. Because again, long game. You're hoping to have this stuff be worth it. It's okay if it drops way down because it's, unless it's the end of the world, which none of this is going to matter anyway. The reality is it's going to come back up, but while it's down, you are now buying stuff cheap. So in the end, it actually works out better for you. These recessions are not things to be feared. They're things to be taken advantage of. Just keep in mind, if you're like within 5 years of retirement, maybe you want that foot off the gas because you don't want that thing hitting right before you're about to retire and all of a sudden the pool of money that you're going to be drawing from isn't there. You want to make sure you shift to stuff that's not going to drop. You're not going to earn as much on it, but it'll be there. Maybe you still keep a part of it that you're aggressive with, but just make sure you're making an informed decision. Don't just, the market's doing great, I'm going to dump more in, and then it crashes. I got to stop buying now because everything crashed. You're doing the opposite. You're doing the buy low, instead of buy low, sell high, you're doing the opposite. You sold high, or you didn't sell high. You waited for it to drop. So anyway, but just some numbers for you. $300 a month at a 7% return. And again, the average return of the stock market is 10. If you're more aggressive, you can do a lot better than this. In 40 years, which, from 25 to 65, you got 741 in there. At 400 a month, it goes to 988. At 500, 1,000,002. At 45 years, and I look at the big jump in that extra 5 years, because money is doubling as time goes on. At a 7-year, on average, there's something called the rule of 72s. If you take 72, divide it by the rate of return, and that is the number of years it takes for the money to double. It's an approximate, and it gets a little more out of whack on the extremes, but essentially it's about right. It takes, at 7%, about 10 years to double. At 10%, it takes about 7 years to double. So these numbers are considerably higher at 10%. I'm just giving you conservative numbers for how much you can do with your money if you're putting what's effectively $211 or $188 a month, depending on your tax bracket, into this. Now, this is the big difference here, and this is why what I want to point out is, if you're only doing it for 20 years, if you wait to start this, the younger you start, the more tremendous the growth is. 20 years is not half. You see that? 741, 152. I mean, what is that? That's about 1/6. About right? 1/5. So obviously 40 to 20 doesn't make it half. It's a much bigger difference. So the sooner you start, the less it takes to have a lot of money at the end. And now what else though? I mean, is your income always going to stay the same? Hopefully it goes up, right? Your contribution can go up over time. But the earlier you start and maintain that number, and this is part of the conversation. You know those commercials where the guy's like, well, what's your number? And his number is 1,752,000. And the other guy's number is 2,350,000. And we're going to have you on a path to get to your number. That's the kind of thinking you want to have. That commercial, I think it's a great commercial because that is where you should be going. And that is the conversation you should be having with the people that are in charge of your investments if you're in the 401k. If you're not, keep this in mind. If you're not contributing, and Team Horner's willing to do a match, doesn't that really mean you're saying, I know you're willing to pay me more, but really don't worry about it. Give it to the next guy. Because that's exactly what you're doing when you're not contributing and trying to contribute at a level that you're going to get every extra penny that you can get out of them. And by the way, they do other kinds of things on top of that for people that are in the 401ks. As in, like, don't they have like cash?
No, that's a Christmas bonus is different.
Christmas, is that based on the profit sharing too, though?
Yes, based on the
Okay.
profits.
That's everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. But anyway, you see where I'm going with this. You're walking away from money, and since you don't know if you're going to be able to survive on Social Security or how old you have to be to start getting Social Security, let me tell you something. Disability doesn't pay as much as Social Security. So if something happens to you on disability, you may be waiting a while to get to that money. What about a home? If you have a home and you can pay it off, or you can have a paid off home by the time you retire, now you got another source of, and what happens usually when you have a older home, you're getting towards retirement, kids are gone. Do you need all the room anymore? So there's the opportunity to downsize and potentially take a bunch of cash out of that home too. This is part of that whole plan is becoming the homeowner. And this is why I say credit is part of this. Because the ability to buy a home and the ability, and I'm going to show you some other things that matter about credit as far as your money goes, why good credit makes life cheaper. And so it's all part of the master plan, but if you can have a home that you, it's not just paying it off, and we'll get back to it, but you know, Social Security, like I said, under attack, the age for receiving benefits keeps going, and can you survive on Social Security alone? And if you can't afford to save, I said, side hustles, eBay selling. There's people that go to, you know, they learn what kind of stuff sells on eBay, and they go to garage sales every Saturday. I have a buddy that was making a few hundred extra bucks a month just doing nothing but selling games because he's always been a gamer, and vintage games are a big thing right now. So he's buying these old gaming systems and selling them, and he's buying the right games because he knows which games, like apparently the sports games are the wrong ones to do. You want things where you know, let's just say they're a little stabby or, you know, murdery, but those kind of games, you know, play well over time, or even your old Sonics and things like that. But these are things that people are doing. Some people are selling, they're finding vintage t-shirts, you know, t-shirts with certain logos on them that, you know, aren't around anymore, and they're selling those on eBay for, you know, they're buying for 50 cents and they sell them for $20. You know, so there's a lot of it. You have a bunch of old magazines, Life magazines. I've got a bunch of old Sports Illustrated swimsuit issues from years ago that just been sitting in a box. It's like, you know what, there's probably someone that wants those, you know? I don't know who. I haven't opened them up in years, but apparently there's a market. I looked into it. So there's all sorts of stuff you can do. There's dog walking, there's rideshare, there's grocery shopping, food delivery. You know, there's a million things that they have the, what do they call those kind of apps? The Uber apps, there's a, yeah, but there's a term for the apps where you like get paid to go do services, including, and it's not just ride sharing, but they have I forget the name for it, but there's things out there. There's, so, and sometimes these are just things to get yourself over a hump. Sometimes they're things just to reach a short-term goal, whatever it is. Maybe to try to get that safety net built up so you have it sooner rather than later. Whatever the case is, there are things that are out there. And some quick tips for saving. FPL, and again, I could do a whole class on this, but FPL has a whole bunch of great tips and tools that they have on their website. SouthernSavers.com and the Crazy Coupon Lady, they have all the deals at all the grocery stores. They also tell you coupons that are at competitors. They tell you if this store takes competitors' coupons, or how they, like for instance, Walmart will only take a competitor coupon if a final price is listed on it. Not if it's if it says 2 for 1 or half off, they're not going to honor that, but they will honor anything that has an actual final price. Publix, certain Publixes, you might have to talk to your local store, will honor a Winn-Dixie coupon if there's a Winn-Dixie nearby. But they may not if there's none anywhere near. Barcode scanner apps let you shop online while you're in the store. There's a lot of places like Best Buy, like Target, Walmart, places like that, that if you can get the identical item somewhere else and it's not on clearance, they'll usually have that caveat, but if you can find it cheaper, you can walk out of that store with it right there on the spot. So scan it with a barcode and shop it right there. I have that's a big part of my Christmas shopping strategy. Find what I want in the store, and you know what? If you do it early enough, buy it online if they won't match it, right? It's when you're buying at the last second. Some of this takes a lot of planning, and again, the couponing tips are on the Crazy Coupon Lady and Southern Savers. So if you don't have experience in how to coupon and really make it work, they have some great tools. And I know guys, we don't like the coupon, right? The whole idea of coupons. But man, that's money. When you start looking at how much money it can save you, just spend a little time on these sites and plan out a shopping trip based on coupons that are out there and savings that are out there. And by the way, manufacturer's coupons and store coupons, most stores will take both because the manufacturer's coupon is like cash to the store. So if you've got a store coupon and a manufacturer's coupon, you can use both on the same item, 2 coupons in one. So if it's buy one, get one, and you got 2 coupons, I've seen, one of my favorite examples was Mueller's spaghetti for a penny. When you got the coupon, it was a penny. Now, the dried spaghetti is not going to go bad, is it? So you're going to have it. So you can buy a whole bunch of it. And so if you buy way more, it'll tell you all this stuff, but I'm just trying to give you ideas. And and this here, and by the way, anybody that wants this, my information, you know what, I didn't bring a stack of cards this time.
That's
But
right.
you can contact
Email
Kim,
everybody.
and she knows how to get me, and also she can give you a copy of the entire presentation. But moneycrashes.com, the best mobile coupon apps for smartphones. Some of them give you cash back when you buy things. Some of them just give you discounts on things. There's so many different ways of doing it. And check out some of these apps. Find the one that fits the way you like to do things. But these are money.
Cartwheel for Target is a really good one.
Yeah. Now, the final leg is credit. And everything is cheaper with credit. When it comes to loans, right? That's the obvious one. You get better rates, right?
Yeah,
What about insurance?
true.
A lot of insurance companies give you a discount for good credit. It's funny. They can't charge you extra for having bad credit. But they can charge everybody too much and then give you a discount for good credit, and somehow that's different. But it happens, and it's real, so that's money, right? What about deposits on utilities and rentals? If you're trying to move into a place, you know what? Has anybody ever had a landlord try to keep their money, their deposit, their security deposit, or a big chunk of it? I have, and I can tell you that place was spotless. I had pictures. I actually had to go show them. No. You're not going to tell me this needed a professional to come in and clean afterwards, because I actually documented and took pictures and video of it. But I'm just saying, those security deposits don't always come back to you. And sometimes it's just not worth fighting them. Well, if you get a lower security deposit or even the $99 move-in special, they're not as likely to try that because the money's not sitting there for them to try not to give back to you, especially private individuals. So, many jobs now, You know, maybe not for you, but your spouse or significant other, because of course we're all staying here forever, right? That was for her. She knows the owner.
You just told us to move to North Carolina.
Well, when Team Horner opens up a North Carolina branch. Anyway, but many jobs do look at credit now. And it's not just, even if you own your own company, if you want to get a government contract, they're looking at your credit. If you're going to get any kind of security level at all for a government contract, you got to have good credit. So it affects us in many, many ways. And also, buying a home can become part of that long-term strategy. And it's not just being able to sell a home and downsize to get the equity out. There's something called a reverse mortgage that, if it's for the right reasons, can be a very good idea. You can't do this until I think you're 62. But it's something that lets you access the equity in a home in a loan and have access to some of that money. Not all of it, but it lets you, stay in the same home. And some people do a reverse mortgage purchase. They downsize, but they only use some of the money to buy the home and then take the remainder in a reverse mortgage so they keep more of their cash in hand. It's a high cost as far as the closing costs go, but if it's going to help you maintain a standard of living, it could be a good idea. And again, I don't recommend automatically go do a reverse mortgage if you're able to, only if it makes sense for you. But for a lot of people it does make sense, and it has helped a lot of people stay in their homes. Cars, and I think this is the thing with credit, with good credit, cars can eventually be paid for cash. If we buy cars the right way, this is what we do with cars. I think we buy them upside down. We go in and they say, oh, we can do this with, you got good enough credit. If your credit's bad, you're going to put a big down payment, but it doesn't matter because it's going to be wiped out by the VIG. They're going to pay the finance company. It's going to force them to overprice the car anyway and charge you the high rate. But let's say you qualify for the best of the best in financing. Oh, don't put any money down. Just, here's the keys. Drive off with our car. Take it. Finance the full amount you're paying for it, plus the taxes, plus the tag fees. Oh, and by the way, you better give us another $1,200 for gap insurance, so if it gets crashed and you have negative equity in the car, which you're inevitably going to have because you put nothing down, it will cover the difference between what you owe and what the insurance company is going to pay. Because is the insurance company there to pay your car off, or are they there to cover the value of the car? Yeah, they're going to cover the value of the car. So if it's totaled or stolen and you owe more than it's worth, and guess what happens the moment you drive it off the lot? A brand new car drops about 20%, just like that. Now, if it's dropping 20% and you're financing the taxes on top of it on $20,000, what's that, 1,400 extra bucks, plus another $1,200 for the for the gap insurance, plus the tag fees. So you're talking about $3,000, and you just lost $4,000. You're $7,000 upside down if you're lucky. And every month, because now they also have you finance it for 72, 84 months. And with these kinds of financing, you're lucky if you're paying half of your payment to principal and half to interest at the beginning. So while it's depreciating at its highest rate during that first year, and the second year is the second most, third year is the third most, fourth year is the fourth most. Are you seeing a pattern here? So you're taking a car that's depreciating at its fastest rate and you're paying it off at its lowest rate. It's coming down the slowest. And the reason it's coming down so, why do you think that the payoff comes down so slowly at the beginning of a loan?
Because you're paying the interest.
Because you're paying, but why? Why is it so much more?
Well, you have to pay them first.
Well, and that's what a lot of people think, is you have to pay them first. That's an answer that I can almost assure that I'll get. The reality is, just think of it this way. If you put $20,000 into the bank, and they say they're going to pay you 5% interest, I know they don't pay that much, but let's just say there are those of us that remember 5% interest on savings. But let's say they say they're going to pay you 5% interest. Do you want them to pay you 5% interest on $20,000 if that's what you put in there, or do you want them to give it to you on 10? You want 5% interest on your whole $20,000, right? Well, when you finance a car for $20,000, you're the bank. You've got their $20,000 that you're going to pay back. So what do they expect every month? The interest on the amount that you owe. So the interest is front-loaded not because they're trying to get their money first, but because you have a much higher balance, so the interest is much larger. The payment is always the same. But when you paid it down to $10,000, the interest is half of what it is than when you owe $20,000. So at $10,000, a lot more of your money is going to principal. It's really that simple. They're just asking you to pay them interest on the amount of their money you still have. Makes sense, right? So it's not really, they're not screwing you, but you're being put into that bad situation up front. How do we avoid this bad situation? How about if we put a third of the money down up front? How about we buy a car that we can afford to pay off in 3 years? And what if we buy a car that's a couple years old, so we knock off the worst 2 years of depreciation? And then drive it for 7 years, 10 years, and keep paying yourself those payments. So those payments that you were already used to paying now are going into a pool to buy your next car. So the car after, you're putting maybe 2/3 down. Maybe you're paying it off. But in 3 cars, you're almost inevitably, if you drive a car into dirt, and just remember those last few years, it's really not losing money. You may put some money into repairs, but they're usually a lot less than payments. So if you can get 7 years, 10 years out of a car and pay yourself 4 to 7 years worth of payments, eventually you're just buying a car for cash and not paying other people to use your money. Now maybe you decide that your money's better off in investments and they got a real good deal on financing. Just keep in mind, look at it both ways, because if they offer you a deal on financing, they're usually also saying, well, if you don't finance, we'll give you this big rebate. Because if they tell you 0% financing, well, what bank is going to make money on 0% financing? None, right? So the money's coming from somewhere. It's coming from the rebate they're not giving you and giving to the bank instead up front for the financing. There's always, nobody finances anything for free. So whenever you see 0%, the money's coming from somewhere. It's either discount that you're not getting or something else. But anyway, the bottom line is these are things that we do wrong, cars. So you can turn that into basically something that's putting money back instead of taking money all the time. And when you do total the car, by the way, even with the gap insurance, most gap insurance policies will only cover the first $5,000. If you drive too many miles, they will reduce the amount that they will cover because they consider that additional mileage as depreciating the car on your own. So you're adding depreciation, it's not worth as much. If you've had an accident in the car and it's been repaired, they will take that against it too, because a car that's been in an accident is not worth as much as a car that was not in an accident. So gap insurance is not exactly the way it's presented to you by the finance guy. So why not just avoid needing it altogether and buy the cars a little smarter? Yep.
Yeah, what's your position on buying versus leasing?
Well, leasing commits you to payments. So if you're somebody that's really going to be in a panic if you ever break down, and I'll tell you, my ex-wife was that person, so I leased her cars. If you're leasing them at a you got to look at what is the cost of buying. If your lease payment for 3 years is the same as your buy payment for 6 years, it may not be such a good deal. You got to look at it's a real complicated formula because you got to be able to look ahead to see what is the car likely to be worth based on how I'm driving it. You got to be careful when you're leasing because they do give you only a certain number of miles to drive, and if you drive more than those miles, the mileage penalty per mile is much greater than the typical penalty. So I know we got to move along here. If you want to contact me, though, we can have a deeper conversation on that. But leasing is a good idea for the right person, but it's probably done by a lot more people than should, is my opinion on it. Anyway, so credit at its most basic level, I'm just going to give you the real quick summary because we need to do a drawing here, right, and get onto this. And again, just so you know, I do one-on-ones. They pay for me to do the one-on-ones for you. So if you want to do a one-on-one on any of these areas here, if you want to try to find balance in your budget and try to help set up goals, things like this kind of stuff, we can do that. If you want to work on your credit, we can do that. But at its most basic level, the older the bad stuff gets, the less it hurts you. You got to stop having negative items. Nothing in collections, no lates on your credit report. Stop that and let the bad stuff get older. And as long as you've got positive payment history, which means you do have to have some form of credit to create that positive history, it's not that hard to do. And again, we can have that conversation But as long as you got positive history and you let the bad stuff get old, your credit is going to rise. And if you can keep the balances on your credit cards down, if you have credit cards, the more you owe on them relative to the limit, it's a percentage of the limit. The higher the percentage you owe, the lower your score. And there is no magic number to have as the amount that you're using. I know that a lot of banks will tell you, use 30% of what your available credit is. That's a BS number. 0 is the number. If your credit card balances are 0, or really if they're below 10% of what's available, that's where you're going to have the max score. But we don't have to worry about this every month. You can use the credit card for a vacation, max it out, and pay it off right away, unless you're getting ready to buy a house. Don't, just try to make sure your balance is at 0 when you're going to make a major purchase. And make sure it's showing on your credit reports at zeros. And there's a million ways to monitor your credit report to see that it's showing 0. Remember, they only report once a month, so don't just assume I paid it off so it's got a 0 on the report. Understand, it depends on when that company reports that balance. But if you can make your balance 0 at the time you're getting ready to do a house, do a car, you're going to max out your credit score. You can actually manipulate your credit score. So anyway, I think we've pretty much hit it. One last thing. You can get rewards on credit cards. If you use them for everything like my parents do and then pay them off at the end of the month, they're getting $700, $800 a year in cash from a credit card. If your thing is taking trips, well, part of saving for trips could be using the credit card. So if you can get the good credit to get the rewards card, you got it. So anyway, I told you we can do reviews. Here's my information if you want to write it down. Kim needs to do a drawing real quick. All right, so the questions, if you want to
Oh, you got it, Ben.
read one of the questions out.
Okay, you can open up. You got
They're
it.
coming in a minute.
See?
Guys, keep it down. The questions are going to come over the speaker. So.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming. Thank you. Yeah, just give me a call if you. Be glad to talk about so we can figure out for you whether it's better or not.
Can you verbally hear me? Yes.
Thanks, guys.
James, go ahead with your question.
Kevin, can I ask a question now?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
All right, great. I currently have a 401k I'm contributing to, but I would like to start a Roth account. I understand that Corner matches half of the cost of the John Hancock Roth accounts. How does that compare to the fees that Vanguard would charge?
Yeah, that's honestly, that's not my area of expertise. You want to talk to the 401k coordinators?
That's Lloyd Macedo, and I'll get you his information, Jim. That's the best question for him.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll send it to you.
Lara, you're next.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. So, I came in a little late, but if you cancel credit cards, does it negatively affect your FICO score?
Well, it's not a yes or no question. If you cancel credit cards impact your score in a couple of ways. The 15% of your credit score has to do with the age of your account. So let's just say that you cancel 3 cards that you've had for 15 years and everything else on your credit is significantly newer than that, you may be reducing the age of your profile. That could be a negative. At the same time, 30% of your FICO score specifically has to do with the balances you owe relative to the limit. If all of your cards are paid off and you're canceling a couple of recent cards, it's really not going to matter. But if you're carrying balances overall, the limits that are available on those cards that you cancel are going to be taken out of the available credit calculation. So if you, let's just say you had $10,000 in available credit and you have $4,000 in balances and you cancel a $5,000 card that's been paid off, you just went from using 40%, 4,000 out of 10,000 available, to suddenly utilizing 80% of your available credit because now you only have 5,000 available. So by closing that account, you could actually significantly drop your score because suddenly it looks like you're maxing out your cards where before you were using a moderate amount of the available credit. So it's really not a one-size-fits-all answer. It's really, this is something that if you want to do a review also, again, you can contact me You can contact him to get my information. We can look at your specific situation and what you were planning to do in the near future or long-term future, and then I can help you make a decision on whether it makes sense to get rid of those cards or not. Because it's really, there's too many possibilities, and I don't want to sit here and try to dive down into your specific situation right now. But we can do that.
Yeah, because I don't carry debt really. So I just have newer cards when they entice you to open up the
Okay.
card to get the 10% off. Or
Right,
whatever.
right. Yeah, that's
And then I look at the interest rate and it's like 28%.
right. Yeah.
Like,
Store cards are always high, and that's one of the, I kid you not when I tell you, I actually had a client one time that had 43 credit cards with balances. And
oh, wow.
41 of those cards were store cards. The woman never said no to a 10% discount in her life. But they all had balances. So she was in serious trouble because even though they were small balances, you know, the minimum payment even on a $200 balance on a lot of these cards is $30-$40. So she had this huge payment that was way out of whack with the amount she actually owed. So it really got her in trouble. But yeah, if your balances are extremely low relative to, if you're using after you close the cards less than 10% of your available credit, you should be okay, especially if the ones you're closing are the newer cards. Then I would say that's probably fine.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Great question. We-
Yep, that's it. No more questions.
That's it? Okay.
Thank you.
Well, if there's anyone still listening, you can contact me.
Yeah, and I'll
Thank
get-
you so much.